Thanks for joining us live with Miami's Community News. And our guest is Kevin Cabrera, who's running for the Miami-Dade County Commission, District 6.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Our pleasure. And the question is, why should somebody care about who is their county commission, or when, even if they're just in the county or within one of the 34 plus cities?
Well, I tell folks that usually the government closest to the people is the one that affects them every day. Right now, as we see in DC, they probably could not pass a Mother's Day resolution if they tried to. So as you go down that chain of government, your local government, your county government is the one that, does changes, whether it be transportation at the airport, at the seaport, whatever, the county police force, the county fire, all these sorts of services that affect your daily quality of life. In addition to protecting the environment, whether it be Biscayne Bay or any of these gems that we have in our community, that goes through your county commission.
And if you're in unincorporated Dade County, which there are a huge part of the area,
I think nearly half of the county.
So that's the city, if you will, for them. And the local commissioner is the contact for their constituents in the area. You're running in District 6.
Yes.
With basic boundaries, how far east, west, north, and south?
It's a very, I'd say it's probably half of a congressional district, right? You've got South Hialeah, you've got southeast Hialeah, followed by Miami Springs and Virginia Gardens. Then you have the entirety of the airport. Then Flagami, Grapeland. You've got Coral Gables to about Coral Way, but then it kind of shifts over a bit as well. And you've got Coral Terrace, West Miami, and then 67th Avenue in the Palmetto, all the way down to Glenver Heights, which is about Sunset and the Palmetto. And then it also comes out and you get Mall of the Americas as well. So it's a large district that's very diverse. You've got unincorporated, you've got different municipalities. So it's a very diverse and large district.
And how many people is that, more or less?
So you're talking over 100,000 people. Yeah, so it's a very large district.
So some folks have a difficulty understanding that you could be in a city and you could have the local city government, and then you could have the county commission is the background to all of that. And if they're across the street from the city, all right, then they're just in the county and they need to deal with the county rather than the city for all their issues.
The perfect example is there's an intersection right here on US 1 right by Sunset Place, where depending on which corner of the intersection you are, you can either be in unincorporated South Miami or Coral Gables.
Yes.
So it's kind of where all these different municipalities meet, and it's the same thing in this district, right? Depending on where you are, you might very well be the dividing line between a different municipality, but still, at the end of the day, the county government handles a lot of these overarching issues, such as transportation, the seaport, the environmental aspects of the county, and most of the building and permitting, because most of it has to go through the Department of DERM, which is environmental management, do go through the county. So they have a lot of oversight over these sorts of things.
And I think it was in 1994, the county commission started with local community councils, which are local zoning boards. Historically, those were in areas where there was no city in the county. So people in an unincorporated Dade County could have a say in electing their local representatives. So you served on one of the local community councils.
I did, and I think that's where we first met back in 2014 through 2018. And I think it was Commissioner Diaz de la Portilla at the time that created the community councils back in 1994. And they were created in the absence of a city. Like you were saying, you wanted to make sure they had, a mechanism for these zoning and CDMP issues at that local level, since they didn't have a municipality.
So right now, what are some of the big issues that you think that constituents are having concerning where they're living?
So I tell folks I care about a lot of different issues. Some of them are, kind of the sexy issues that everybody talks about, and others are, things that'll make county function better, make sure that county functions for the people, not the other way around. And I think first and foremost, we got to make sure that we properly fund our first responders, be it our police force or our firefighters and the rest of our first responders, because time and time again, when you ask folks one of the top issues on their mind, it's making sure that they feel safe in their homes. So I think it's important that we continue to fund and give them those resources. But there's other issues, like, for example, building and permitting, right? It took me over 7 months to get a septic to sewer conversion permit, something that the county was asking me to do, or quite frankly telling me to do, because we had a leak in our septic tank. And we went down this process, and it took me 7 months where you were being ping-ponged from one department to another at that ginormous kind of bureaucracy on 117 on Coral Way. And you went from one window to another, and before you know it, the day's over and you haven't been able to solve your issue. So I think folks are tired of that sense of bureaucracy. And I tell folks, I don't just find the problems, I'm trying to find the solutions. And my understanding is Jacksonville has an ordinance where you can get your permits in 30 days. And I think that's a good ordinance. And if you don't get your permit in 30 days, they give you a punch list that doesn't change. Because the one thing that folks I know bothers them, and it bothered me, was the inspector comes to your home and says, well, you got to fix this corner. I said, well, I'll fix the corner. And then they come back again and say, well, it wasn't, that corner's fine, but now you've got this corner.
So the county, in its public works department and their waste management, have improved the time for bulky waste pickups from 8 days to 3. Because people were saying, why is this trash sitting out here for so long? Because it gets frustrating for people. And same what you're saying is when people go in and then they try to get it done and they keep adding those things.
Absolutely. And I think that I think we're very reactive right now instead of being proactive, right? I remember, and you might remember yourself, for many, many years, we bragged about having the lowest water rates in the country, right? And then we get a consent decree by the federal government because our pipes are spewing sewage all over the place. So I think we got to be a little bit more reactive and saying, well, if the term of this pipe or this street or whatever it may be is coming to an end, let's make sure we have a plan. Let's not wait for the street to fall apart before we start fixing it. And also, if we're going to open the street, let's do it all at once. Because I know we've all had these issues where, you see it, they open up the street this week, they put something in, and then 2 weeks later, they come and they do something else. So you're creating a hindrance for the voters and the residents and the constituents of that area that drive through that street. So let's try to coordinate so that we can do all of the repairs at once.
So we know that transportation is a very big issue for most people, especially down in the South End. I was just reading a story that was in Miami today about the underground transportation conversation that's going on. And to be able to, like a tunnel, there'd be 5 or 6 of them. I mean, it's a lot of money, but they're going to the next phase about how to be able to move people around. Now, your district includes Miami International Airport. Does it include, so it includes Lejeune and 12th Street and 14th Street. I think something's going to go on over there pretty soon at that golf course, all right? Which people have been telling me when that thing gets done, people are really concerned about the traffic on those days, all right? That there's games. And some of those people, a lot of people were against it, but it passed and it's going to be done. What's your take on it and being able to provide that service and that entertainment in your district?
Well, first and foremost, I think that what we've seen for a long time is that impact fee dollars aren't used for impact, right? Sometimes they're used and transferred over to general revenue. We got to make sure that the money that we're getting from these projects in terms of impact fees are used for that purpose, right? Are used to make sure that we have the necessary infrastructure for whatever project it is we're doing, whether it be that stadium or whether it be just a shopping center, that we use those dollars to make sure that we can mitigate that transportation issue. But there's something else, another issue with transportation, right? I think you might also remember when we passed the half penny, more than 2 decades ago, and I know that the half penny was probably never enough, and they probably to fund what was promised or what we thought we'd get at the time. But in 2008, they decided to use these funds for operating as opposed to for new capital projects. Plus. So I think we have to make sure that if these dollars were promised for new transportation projects so that we can fix these issues, then we have to use it for that. Or maybe we should give the half penny back if we're not ready to start using it for what's
you bring
needed.
up a really good point. So the county in its infinite wisdom decided to use that money for operations, not put it in enough of it back into transportation. So here we are in 2022, wondering how we're going to move people from one end of the county to the other, and specifically from here south, all right? Yeah. And from south to come up north, because there aren't certainly not enough jobs that way. So you served 4+ years in community council, and were you appointed or did you run?
I was appointed and then reelected.
All right. And so tell us about your other public work and volunteerism.
So I tell folks this, and I've worked on a number of different campaigns. Most recently, I led President Trump's campaign here in Florida, and I've worked for Governor Bush and a few others. But I've also got business experience. And I think that's what's important, on this county commission. Now that we have term limits and we're going to get fresh faces and hopefully some new ideas, I think it's important that you have somebody who has that combination. prior to being involved in politics, I was the domestic operations manager at a freight forwarding company, right? Where you got to have out of the box ideas on how to move different shipments around the world. In addition to that, before that, I worked at a small mom and pop pharmacy in Little Havana, where again, it was about customer service and making sure that, if we were going to compete, that's what we competed on: customer service, on delivery to the home, on those sorts of things. So I think when you combine that with political experience, it gives you the necessary tools to be an effective commissioner.
Giving deference to our senior people all the way from local all the way to Washington. Yes, they have great ideas and they're implementing them. But the reality is when there's new ideas that are outside the box of our own creation, all right, all of a sudden you get to look at that. When we look at McDonald's in the 50s and 60s, it was bring your family here. And they showed all the commercials of sitting out front. It was a real family event. Now, over 80% of their business is drive-through. And what made it a little bit more tolerable is they adapted the stores. And when we sit in our cars, we're playing on our phones. So it doesn't matter as much. And we look to see what expedited the use of telehealth, right? Was the pandemic that made that happen faster. So if you're elected, what are some of the things you might bring forth for discussions?
Well, I think that we just need the county to be more efficient, to be more proactive, right? I think we have, you hear a lot about these systems that we have in place, but for whatever reason it may be, I don't think that they're actually efficient. We need to have, we talk about, electronic permitting. I went through this electronic permitting process. I didn't necessarily find it a lot more useful. I think I got more done actually going to these buildings and requesting meetings and meeting with, these different departments than actually through this system. I think if we're going to have these systems, we got to make sure we use them to the best of their abilities. A perfect example is I've been hearing about the traffic synchronization, I think, for a very long time. I think since like the 90s, right? You've been hearing about traffic synchronization. When you find out, when you ask, well, why hasn't it actually been implemented? Why is it that every different mayoral administration, we hear about the same thing? And you hear that it's because sometimes the amount of money that's necessary, to make sure that we get the job done right, they don't want to necessarily, invest that amount into our community. And so I think if we're going to do things, we got to make sure that we do them right and we invest in our community. We invest in solutions that are actually effective in reducing traffic and in making the quality of life for our residents better.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because we know the county's been pushing very hard. The county hired Arella Bagay to help take care of the bay, and I think it's been a very good push. I know the county, I think we have a comment up there. Do we have a comment?
Yeah.
All right. Has been pushing to eliminate septic tanks. There are 120,000 septic tanks, more or less, right, in Miami-Dade County. And that's a lot of money. But the issue isn't just replacing them. It's where's it going to go and how's it going to go there? And so it is billions of dollars to be able to do that. What's your idea? And do you have one yet? How that could be slowly implemented so it doesn't kill the poor guys that have septic tanks like yourself and the grief that goes along with it?
Well, in our previous home, my wife and I, decided to invest in converting from septic to sewer, and I think it was a great decision. And the current home we're in, we don't have that possibility, right? So I think the county has to hopefully continue to work with the state government, continue to work with the federal government. I know that they have a ton of grants out there, for communities, for counties, for municipalities to be able to invest in infrastructure, so that we can, make sure we're taking care of our environment. Yes, I am a Republican, but I am a Teddy Roosevelt Republican, that we got to make sure we take care of our environment. Because if we get rid of our environment, then, how are we going to produce food? How are we going to make sure that we have a sustainable society? So I think we have to make sure that we are investing in infrastructure in this county in a way that is smart and a way that is, that is making sure we don't damage the environment, but we've got to, make sure it's effective what it is that we're doing.
So years ago when my now adult daughter, we have some comments here, was in school, she came home, she said, Daddy, if you hit me, I'm going to call the police. And I said, it's great. Where'd you learn that? She said, school. All right. I said, great. So one of the things we recognize that young people have to be trained about the environment. They got to know that you can't to dump things on the side of the road, that you can't put oil in the ground. You can't let throw your balloons in Biscayne Bay as somebody did. I'm glad they weren't the rest of the people. All right. It was pretty flagrant. That wasn't just an accident. Let's see if we have the comments. Okay. Mr. Cabrera, are you aware of it's from George Gonzalez. Are you aware of the problem with the black olive trees destroying property?
I'm not aware of that issue, but I tell folks I am somebody who's willing to learn and willing to, a lot of these issues. I think we've got to study to make sure we make decisions that are effective and in the best interest of the residents of this community.
So on that commission, how many other commissioners are there?
You've got 13.
So you have 13. So you're up there and you have an idea, you want to pass it by. It takes quite a lot of negotiating to get a majority of the people to agree.
And you got to convince the mayor.
Yes.
You got to get to 7 first. If you've got the mayor, and if not, you got to get to 9. If you get vetoed. But I think, that's where, Ronald Reagan used to say, if you're getting more than 75% of what you ask for, then that's a good deal. So I think you got to have folks there that are willing to negotiate, folks that are willing, to make sure that they work together in a cohesive manner to make sure that we put the residents and the small businesses of Miami-Dade County first.
So one of the things that's been occurring for the last 20 years is annexation and incorporation. Are you aware of the city of West Miami wanting to annex any areas that are now the county?
I have not heard that regarding the city of West Miami.
I haven't either.
I'm not familiar with the city of West Miami doing that. But what I will say is that we got to make sure that if we're going to go through these, if we're going to do these sorts of things, one, we got to do it in a way that makes sense, right? I don't think you should do it in a way where now residents are going to be. You got to make sure residents understand the consequences of this, right? Are they going to be paying higher property taxes? Are they not? What happens to their services? Who's going to be providing their fire? Who's going to be providing their police? You got to make sure that they're aware of all these things and the different, sometimes unintended consequences. Because sometimes you hear from folks, hey, we were annexed and all of a sudden our property taxes went up by a bunch of dollars. And we got to make sure that they understand all of the implications that come with that.
So lots of people, ourselves included, we wind up being in our box and we stay there. No, this is all okay. And I know as humankind and animals, we want to protect what we have, and we won't work as hard at getting something new as we will to protect that. We've done unofficial polls in Kendall for 20 years, and there's all this talk about incorporation. We couldn't put together 100 people out of, then there were 200,000 plus that were pro-incorporation in Kendall. But yet the 20 people, all right, that were pro-incorporation, of which we were, all right, stirred up a lot of the conversation. We recognize it has to come from the ground up, not from the top down, because if they don't want it, they're gonna be anti-incorporation. We saw that in the Falls and recently in Westchester, where not enough people wanted that. So let's look at.
I think the voters usually know what's best for them, not government. So I think we should listen to voters when they speak, and we should make sure that we value what it is that they'd like. And I think voter intent and voter will is important, and we should make sure that we keep that in mind when we make decisions.
When people go to a local community council, they typically, the leaders are a little bit more lenient with their time, and it's a little more folksy type of stuff, especially if it's
or like a town hall type
yes,
deal.
Right. Versus when you go downtown for that same hearing that's being appealed to downtown, it's like brutal, right? And we have seen it, and you have seen it dozens and dozens of times where people get up to speak. Okay, all right, everybody that's for it, raise your hand. Everybody that's against, okay, we'll take 5 on each side. That'll come up. We understand that has to be done in order to expedite it, but the people feel left out, and I think people want to know that they're not alone. So if you get elected, what are you going to do to help people feel that they are part of this?
I think public input and public comment's important, and I think we've got to make sure we allow people an avenue and access to their elected officials to voice their opinion. And I think that's important, right? At the end of the day, elected officials are representative of the people, not the other way around. Right. So I think it's important to value their opinion and to know their opinion and to let them voice it.
So one of the things that we do know is when the elected officials, county elected officials, do town hall meetings, even if 10 people show up, that's 10 more people that say, hey, I met so-and-so, nice person. All right.
I think
Speaks
it's important.
Well, and very important.
I think constituent service is probably one of the more important parts of this job, because at the end of the day, you are there to serve your district, to serve the people of Miami-Dade County. You are there as their representative. And your job, your number one job, is to make sure that you can help them have a better daily life. And if it's being their liaison with a department at the county where they're having some sort of issue that they can't get through the red tape, then it's your job as their commissioner to make sure that you're able to cut that red tape and try to solve that issue for them.
And as more and more people are being led to electronic communications, all right, and everybody trying to remember all their passwords. I can tell you how many times
and then now they make you change it. Like
Yes.
every 6 months, they'll do this whole thing where you say, hey, it's your password's expired, change it. Like, now I got to add 15 more exclamation marks.
Sometimes we want to learn how to do it. Other times we just want to get it done.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many times around here we just hand the phone to somebody, just fix this for me. All right. Getting through to most places, not necessarily with the county, but getting to most places is very frustrating for everybody. And people don't want to be on hold. I got to tell you, I was calling Section 8. Try it yourself. All right. And you want to speak to somebody. Approximate hold time, 3 hours, 10 minutes. Call back.
It's like calling an airline.
4 hours. And it's like, holy moly. And I know that part of that is tried to force people to use the website. But if you can't use the website, don't want to use the website, and you want to have a dialogue with somebody.
Not everybody has access to that, but I think that's why it's important to be open to the people, to have office hours. Mayor Lago in Coral Gables does a great job. I think it's every Friday. He does office hours, and folks are able to come in without any sort of appointment. You show up, you write your name on the list, and he's there for a few hours, and you're able to meet with him. And I think commissioners should do something similar, right? They should have open office hours where the constituents can come by and voice, different opinions and issues that they're having and seek your help and meet their elected officials. Right. The amount of times you hear that they can't meet their elected officials is kind of crazy that I've heard this from people. So I think he does a very good job at doing these office hours every Friday. And I'd love to do something similar once elected.
When did you realize, at what age were you when you realized that you wanted to serve the public in an elected position?
I'd say at a very young age. I'm going to share a funny story with you. So
we have 2 minutes left.
It's me and my mom. She used to tell me, well, let's go to Publix. Do you want to go with me to go get the groceries? I'm like, yeah, sure, Mom, I'm going to go. And then she'd be like, well, where are you going? I said, well, I got to change. And she said, what are you going to put on? I said, well, I'm putting on a suit. And I would put on a suit and I get my dad's briefcase. And she goes, well, why are you going to Publix like that?
Is this real? It's for real, folks.
And she's like, why are you going? And I'll bring my mom here if you want. And she goes, well, why are you getting a briefcase and putting on a suit? And well, one day I said, I'm going to run for office. And I got to make sure that when people see me, I look, respectable and
how old were you?
I want to say I was like probably 8 or 9 or something along those lines.
You're lucky because a lot of people are 80 or 90 and then when they figure it out. So you're very lucky to do that. We have 2 minutes left. And what I'd like you to do is spend 1 minute talking to a young person. Let's say 17 to 20 years old, and he's looking to the future. The pandemic is on the way out, hopefully. All right. And talk to him about their future. And then when you get done, I want you to tell people why they should vote for you. You can look at which camera? This one right here. Look straight at it.
Okay.
You're on. Go ahead. Talk to him.
So we're talking about.
Yeah, first thing you're going to talk to the 17 to 20-year-old about their future here in Miami-Dade County.
Listen, I think we have a very promising future ahead, you and this community, and I think quite frankly, it's because of the youth and because we've advanced so much as a society. We have all sorts of technological advances that we did not have in the past that make life a lot easier, and I think it's important not only that that you be part of the solution of moving this county forward and be more effective in serving its people. And I think you guys are the future and you will help us get there.
Okay. Now, tell us when the minute left, why somebody should consider voting for you.
It's very simple. I tell folks that the reason they should vote for me is because I commit myself to them and to making sure we always put the residents and the small businesses of this county first. And that's making sure that we have government agencies that respond to people in a timely manner. That's making sure that we solve this traffic situation where we've had, kind of the pillaging of the half penny for more than 2 decades. And that's making sure that we make sure that business as usual at Miami-Dade County is over and that we make sure that we are a government serving the people, not the other way around.
Terrific. Kevin Cabrera, candidate for Miami-Dade County Commission District 6. Thank you for joining us. If somebody needs to find you, they can find you all over the web.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Michael.
My pleasure.